Right, first of all, thanks Pete for coming up from Wanganui to support me. For those that don't know, Pete mentors Andrew and I, so he always comes up and supports whenever anything's going on. So yeah, thanks Pete for coming and supporting us. So when I was praying about what to talk about today, all week I wasn't really getting anything, but two songs kept playing. I kept hearing these two songs all the time, and I was like, okay, God, so this must be what you're speaking to me about. And then when I was thinking about it just now, like my talk today is always be humble and kind, or it's based on the Good Samaritan. And Andrew and I were talking on the way to New Plymouth yesterday, and we were talking about this young guy that works in one of the supermarkets uptown. He's only 20, and he's living a lifestyle that most of us probably wouldn't agree with. But I just felt God say to me to befriend him and to just love him. So whenever I go in there, I chat away to him. You know, we're on a first name basis now. And he said to me the other day, sorry, just let me think here. He said to me, we were having a conversation, and he said, you're just always so kind to me. Why are you so kind? And I said, well, why wouldn't I be? And it just made me think, you know, we don't have to preach to people that might not be living a lifestyle that's the same as ours. We've just got to love them. So, yeah, then God brought up to me the parable of the Good Samaritan. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's set the scene with a song that a dad wrote for his kids when they were going off to university about always being humble and kind, and it will tie into my talk. And this video shows that no matter who we come across, always be like the Good Samaritan and be humble and kind, even if people are different from us. Right, this morning we're going to look at the parable of the Good Samaritan from Luke 10, 25 to 37. We're going to look at mercy, kindness, humbleness, love, grace, compassion, faithfulness and peace. And finally, we will look at seeing others as God sees them and loving our neighbour as ourselves. So let's read about the Good Samaritan. So if you want to turn to Luke 10, 25 to 37. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbour? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he travelled, came where the man was, and he saw him, and he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. He put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave him to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbour to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. This parable is not the only place where being good and kind is found. Leviticus 19:18 says, you shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbour as yourself. In this verse, you see how the idea of being a good Samaritan, someone who loves his neighbour, has already been taught a long time ago. Jesus also said in Matthew 5:43 to 48, you have heard that it was said, You shall love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. The Apostle Paul said in Galatians 6:10, therefore, as we have the opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. And in Galatians 5:14, all the law is fulfilled in this one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. The parable starts with a man who travelled from Jerusalem to Jericho. However, during his trip, the man got robbed. He was then left half dead, lying on the road. At first, a priest passed by, but he avoided the man. Next, a Levite near the injured man just looked at him. Finally, the third person who came by on the road was a Samaritan. Once he saw the robbed man, he was moved with compassion. As a result, the Samaritan nursed the injured man's wounds. After that, he brought the man to an inn so that the man could rest and recuperate. Finally, the Samaritan instructed the innkeeper to take care of the man, and whatever expense that might incur, he will pay. After giving the parable, Jesus asked the lawyer, who is the neighbour in the story? The lawyer answered correctly, the Good Samaritan. So let's look at a little bit of the history behind the parable to get a bit of perspective. Jerusalem is of higher elevation than Jericho. Thus, Jesus said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. So the distance between Jerusalem and Jericho is about 17 miles. During Jesus' time, the road to Jericho had earned a reputation as a dangerous path because it was riddled with many robbers. Many called the road the way of blood because the robbers often shed countless blood. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was winding and meandering, so it was a perfect place for robbers to set an ambush. You never wanted to travel alone on this road. Who were the Samaritans? According to historians, the Samaritans were people who lived in Samaria in the northern kingdom of Israel and were banished from their homeland. When the Assyrians captured Israel, they exiled most of the Israelites to Assyrian land, but not all the Israelites were removed. Some of them remained. The Assyrians replaced the Israelites with foreigners called the Kuthites to live in Israel. As a result, Israelites who remained in the northern part of Israel intermarried with foreigners. Their sons and daughters became what was later known as the Samaritans. So at the time of Christ, the Samaritans lived amongst the Jews. However, the Jews and the Samaritans hated each other. The division between the two groups of people started way back at the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem under the leadership of Nehemiah. When the Jews returned to Israel, they refused to let the Samaritans join them in worship, and as a result, the Jews thought of the Samaritans as descendants of spiritually corrupt Israelites from the northern kingdom. This was made worse because they also mixed with foreigners who worshipped other gods. The rivalry between Jews and Samaritans only fueled their age-long feud. The Jews strongly feel they are the chosen people. However, of the three who passed by the injured man, only the despised Samaritans stopped to help him. The moral of the story is, do we live what we preach, or do we talk the talk that we don't walk? The Jews talk the talk, but in Christ's time, the common perception was that you only love those close to you and forget the people outside. Jesus gave the parable to explain the importance of not limiting one's love. Here, Christ redefined what neighbour really means. For the Jews, their love is specially reserved for their own kind. They detest their enemies, they don't like their rulers, they don't like their neighbouring nations and countries. In the parable, Christ showed the people that you need to love and help others, no matter who they are. You don't need a reason to love, because love itself is a reason for you to do good to others. In this story, we've seen three men who saw the dying man: the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan. When you look at this, you would typically expect that the priest and the Levite would readily help the victim. However, in the minds of the Jews, it is unimaginable for a Samaritan to be a hero of Christ's story. Yet we see how Christ radically went against the common attitudes of people in his day. Instead of the priest and the Levite, both holding religious positions, who should help the dying man, of all the least expected people, the Samaritan did something extraordinary. What does this tell you? It tells you that even if you are holding a religious position, it doesn't automatically make you righteous. Even if you are a minister, a pastor, a priest, a leader in any situation, it doesn't mean anything until and unless you love other people. In the parable, the three people saw the same dying man, but it was only the Samaritan who took action in doing the right thing. In life, it is not who you are that defines you, it is what you do. You can be the president of your country, the priest in your church, and the leader in your group, but without true love, it means nothing. Jesus wasn't addressing the question, who is my neighbour? But rather, he was trying to teach that we become a neighbour when we have love, mercy, and compassion for others. The Good Samaritan parable is a great story that illustrates how we must love one another. We must not limit ourselves to loving only a specific group of people. Remember that Jesus died for all and not simply for a few. We are to love one another as we love ourselves. Our love for God should motivate us to love our fellow men. Will we show kindness, goodness, mercy, and grace to those around us? Will we love those we don't want to love? On the days when we don't get it right and pass by those in need, will we suck in a big breath and turn around and help them? Will we talk the talk and walk it, so we don't miss the moments right before our eyes? Will we help the person who is hurt and maybe hold their hand? Can we see past ourselves and be a little more like Jesus and a little less like ourselves? We've been saved from who we used to be. Someone at some time helped us and showed us mercy and grace. Let's do the same for others. Let us be humble and kind. Let us open doors, say please and thank you, and give to those in need. As we serve others and build them up with kindness, we won't need to preach at them because our lives will speak to them. Instead, let's love on people and ask or demand nothing in return. That's me. Like I said, it was going to be a short little message. Suzanne, if you could play the last song, which ties everything together, that would be really cool. And if any of this spoke anything to anyone and you'd like prayer afterwards, come and see us.